video of yours today, talking more about the Trump tracker. I know we chatted about that a little while ago, but I would love to hear more about that, because I know you have a website being built, but what is the Trump tracker? You've got a Discord now where you're getting people involved. Can you kind of take the audience through what the Trump tracker is?
Well, first of all, thank you for recording now what is actually, by public remarks, our second podcast, but in reality,
Very true.
So hopefully my mic comes in good the whole time. Good to see you again, friend. I hope you're good. Yes, the Trump tracker is our housing affordability tracker that we are basing around Trump's term and promises, mainly because he made promises to make housing more affordable again. And I think political pundits shouldn't be able to get a campaign going and get votes into their pockets to get into office if they're not going to make good on them. And I think us as Americans have kind of just become okay with that. Housing's my thing. Housing's your thing. I'm not super cool with it because when I look at the numbers, I don't see a world where housing gets affordable without some massive shifts. So we're tracking it. We're tracking prices, rates, the cost of building a home, the cost of owning a home, living in it, milk, bread, eggs, insurance, power, pretty much everything down to bills even being passed in Congress to see, is housing actually being made more affordable? Are we getting closer to a crash? Are we getting closer to things going up again? I think everybody is tired of seeing headlines and pundits saying they know this, they know that. I just wanted to create a one-stop shop anchor of unbiased, unemotional
And it's so good, dude, because you even break down things like unemployment, right? Don't you go through like a bunch of different things? And then how did you pick and choose what is important to kind of make a prediction of what the housing market's going to do? Like when you first sat down and go, okay, it's a combination of these things. How did you curate that in the first place?
We picked 14 variables, and first thing we did is measured. So we took data from the past. I went back in history to say, okay, what led to other crashes? What led to other recessions? One of the key leading indicators, obviously, is employment. If wages go down, people can buy less. There's less consumer spending. There's less disposable income. But also, you could look at car defaults, and okay, that's consumer spending. We could factor that in. So what we did is we tiered it out. There's 4 different tiers of importance or weight that a specific variable holds, and we just went off of what's happened in the past. We're tracking the inversion of the yield. We're tracking joblessness. We're tracking seasonal work. We're tracking part-time work. We're looking at supply because that's humongous. We're looking at affordable supply because that's even more humongous. To bring the real picture of what's actually happening with some math.
Well, we need math more than ever now, because
We need
that's what I
math,
love
brother.
about it. It's
We
like we
need
can
math.
get in, and that's why I don't even really talk about politics much, because I feel you can use math, but a lot of it's opinion based and projections. But data, to me, I just love that I can go look at the data. I'm just reporting the data, and I think this is so important that you're just, because you can have this go through any president or any administration, just keeping it.
Yes, and that's the plan. Also, more than housing, we could track so many different things if we actually took the words that they're being used, the promises are being made. I've said for a while that I think that we should have a PDF April prior to the election campaign begins to say, okay, here's everything I stand on. Here's every issue. Here's how I'm going to tackle it. Here's at least a brief summary plan of what I plan to do, and then run on that campaign. We should all know. It shouldn't be promises. It shouldn't just be words. And a lot of it is. But you're right. It comes up as political because we've made it political. But you do this. You do it so well, dude. You're walking through data. You're walking through receipts. You're walking through real economic numbers when you're comparing like 1985 to 2025, or the cost of groceries over the decades. And people will still get mad in your comment sections. People will still tell you you're wrong, or that you're not working hard enough, or you need to stop complaining. Why are you always talking about problems, not solutions? Because it's not our place. Our place to do it is to bring awareness to the problem, and then for the political pundits to solve them. And again, that goes back to the housing tracker of just, I view the promises as something that's very empty because we're not doing anything to actually create.
Where are you on the Trump tracker in today's world around housing? Like, is it?
It's a fancy Google sheet right now.
I see that. I mean, where do you, like, if it's graded right now? Like, are you? Is it tilting towards crash? Is it tilting towards neutral or going up? Like, where's the health of it right now?
I hear you. So we track it with 4 scores to overarchingly determine the health. All the scores go 1 through 100. Right now, they're all kind of in the 40s. The overarching score says that 40 means nowhere close to affordable.
And then real quick, sorry to interrupt you.
Now,
So, but
in
a
terms of
hundred, so 100 would
Yeah.
be
100 would be a more affordable market, more supply, more affordability, more opportunity, higher wages, everything needed
and
to
then
create
like
a
a
more
10
affordable
would
housing
be,
market.
oh
Yeah.
shit, here comes a crash.
At 10, you wouldn't even need the Trump tracker. Everyone would be living in barrels. Yeah. Yeah. It would be really, really bad. And the crash, there's specifically a number just
Oh,
for
okay,
the crash likelihood. And that is actually inverted. And lower equals less likely crash, higher means more likely crash. If we get above a 75, correction in sight. You get above an 85, 95, again, you're not even going to need the sheet. You're like, yeah. But the aim is that we can have some forward prediction, some forward understanding of it. And I tell you right now, it's leaning a couple of the numbers that stand out to me most recently. We have new construction costs is going down. New construction cost is going down. Now, there is the difference between what's called cost push and demand pull inflation. A lot of the downward pressure is due to lack of demand. There's not a lot of people buying the 4-bed, 3.5-bath homes. But if we look at the new construction of, say, townhomes, row homes, when they are built, they're eaten up. So we have to kind of look at that with a grain of salt. The other grain of salt I think is worth looking at is supply overall for total homes is increasing at a higher rate than typical seasonality. Seasonality, normally we have an uptick in the spring into the summer, and then it kind of dwindles back down into the holidays, and then that cycle continues year after year. We are seeing more supply hit than standard between March into April and then April into May. We don't have the May numbers obviously yet as we record this in May, but a lot of people think that number will keep going up. And if it kept going up for a while, we could see some downward pressure in pricing on resale, but right now it's not in the data. What is in the data, though, is living in a home is more expensive. Power up, eggs, bread, milk, car insurance, home insurance.
And do you
all
feel
those
too?
things
I
up.
think there's like two sellers right now, or potential sellers, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's one group who has a lot of equity. They might have 100, 200, 300,000 of equity, and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to sell, take this equity and upgrade or move, but they don't want to let go of the 3%. So they're kind of stuck in the sense that this is cheap. Then you have people like me. My wife and I bought in the summer of 2022. Even though it's working out fine, we're only down a little bit. We're broke even, but we bought at the kind of the top of the market at a 5.75. And if we were to sell after 3 years of a $3,000 payment, we would basically break even after fees. So we could wipe our hands clean, but the 3 years plus the 5% down payment in our area is basically a break even, or maybe we'd pocket 10K. I've been like looking at it. So we can't move because I'm not going to lose the money. I know that our house will go up if I hold for 10, 15 years, even if we rent it out eventually.
And you would be walking right into an even
Yeah,
higher
can't do
interest
it.
rate, higher
It makes
price.
no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
So I feel like anyone who bought in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025 who wants to move, they aren't positive in equity in most cases. But then the people who have equity don't want to give up the 3% for the 7%. That's why I feel like
And then there's the other seller. I'll volunteer as tribute. Anybody that bought 2020 and before, who own home and have equity, but are in a similar situation. Where do you go? Where do you do? I bought my home September of 2020. I have a 2.2% VA interest rate. I have a $1,250 mortgage. We kind of you know us. We had a front seat view of what was going on, and offers were starting to go up, prices were starting to tick up. We were on the sideline, and I was like, we need to move. We need to get into a house. It's getting tough out here, and ended up getting into this one. 250, ended up bidding 285. Realtor told me I was an idiot. It's worth 400 now. Am I an idiot? Still, yeah, probably. I don't know. But we're in a house, but in a similar scenario, why would we sell? Yeah, you get the equity, you get the money out, and that's great. But if we were to refi, rent, or go buy another home, our monthly payment would triple.
no.
Doesn't make any sense.
How weird. Like, and you've been in the industry a long time. Have you ever seen like this odd of a
Oh, no, no. And I've only been in it for 8 years. I mean, you go back to the 20s when we first started commoditizing real estate, and the realtor, which actually was something that was created off of the British housing markets version of it's where we adapted it from. It's never happened. You can look at the 70s, the late 70s, and that's probably the last time we had an affordability crisis that was similar. That was during the savings and loan crisis that led to stagflation, that led to how Reagan even got into office by saying he's going to fix the economy, and great work.
Yeah.
Uh, the 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 market we have right now has gone up 47% in the last 4.5 years. That's never happened. It's never happened. In fact, I did a video the other day. I'll show the numbers real fast. 1985, you needed to make $24,000 to be able to buy a home. Flash forward to 1999, 15 years later, it's up to 40 grand. Okay, inflation, that's fine. So 15 grand. If you flash forward the next 15 years, though, to 2015, the number actually goes down. Goes to $32,000 by 2015. So literally anybody with a job could get into a house. But now look at today, it's $126,764. It's never gone up more than 25% over a 5-year span. And from 2020 to 2024, or actually 2019 to 2024, it's gone up nearly $85,000, the median income required to buy a house. And even if that number is lower, let's say it's actually only 112, or it's actually only 108, or you're in Mississippi and it's only 92. That's disgusting. Like any way you slice it. So, yeah, I haven't seen it. I mean, what do you think changes? What do you think? Because I get that question so often, Fred. We make similar enough content about a similar enough message where it's a lot of spouting off about a lot of the problems that we have going on. But ultimately, what could change that could fix things?
I mean, the most answer that I hear all the time that I do agree with, but it kind of is losing its substance to me, and I'm curious if you agree. When people just say, well, the clear fix is just we need to cut regulations and build more homes. And I go, yes, but it's also the likelihood of that. Like, even when someone says, if I was going to run for office, I'm like, listen, we just need to raise everyone's wages to $100K a year and everything is good. Like, again, that sounds great, but is it going to happen? Is there going to be regulations cut so that you can have massive homes built? But then what's going to stop investors from going, well, I want to keep up with this home build, keep buying to keep my values up that I'm already invested, and making sure people keep renting. So at the current moment, not to be depressing, I don't see a shift unless there's a recession where like the whole market crashes, but then we're in a whole world of crap. No one should be rooting for that, because that means that we are real screwed.
There's a lot of people following the Trump tracker that are rooting for it. But
yes, I agree. But do you think
a
housing crash, though, it'd be predicated based on job loss more than anything? Because I don't think people are going to lose their homes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's look at the last two times home prices have crashed, Freddie. We're looking at 2008 and 1931. We're looking at times where unemployment were at their highest. We're looking at a time where wages versus cost of living were at their deepest disparity. We're talking about a time where the middle class was getting slashed in every single direction, from what they were making to what they had to spend to the jobs they had available to them. We don't want that. The only time home prices have dropped is when the middle class is getting its butt kicked. The middle class is not in favor of, or at least shouldn't be in favor of, a crash, a housing crash, because of, just like you said, the leading indicators. The leading indicators. Like, we have 14 variables we're tracking, none of which affects a billionaire's lifestyle.
Yeah.
Not a single one of the variables we're tracking for a housing market crash would alter how a big corporation is feeling. The consumer spend would have to go down so dramatically to get to a point where people couldn't afford their house. Like, let me give you an example. 39.6% of homes in America don't even have a mortgage. 82% of mortgages in America, they have a less than 5% interest rate. How do you get those people to sell their property? How do you actually force them to sell when the caveat is, the elephant in the room is, where do you go? I can't buy another home. Rent market's crazy. We live with mom and dad. I guess that's an option, but I can't see millions of people at a time choosing, oh, I'm going to go live with mom or go take on this insane rental market at the same time to bring the supply needed at a low demand market to force home prices down without, exactly like you said, unemployment having to be crazy.
And it's also the one thing that I can't really wrap my head around yet, and I'm curious to get your take on it, is when you do say that you need $127,000 to buy a home, if you think about people who are in the prime ages, which used to be 25 to 45 years old where people were buying homes, how many people 45 and under are earning as a family 127,000? Is it 5 or 10%?
I don't know the number, but it can't be high. Yeah, I don't know the number,
And
but it
so, but
cannot
that's
be
the only
high.
thing that I'm thinking of. I was like, well, if no one can buy, then what does that do to the market?
My side of the debate, if I were to play devil's advocate, is there's a small percentage of people who will buy the majority of homes. I think we're seeing it right now in consumer spending. We're seeing it right now in consumer spending where we saw that 90% of the consumer spending is coming from the top 10%. It's nearly 90% is coming from the top 10%. So if the top 10% of consumers are doing the consumer spending, we know the top 10% of businesses are making most of the profits, like the stock market, like 7 of the companies at the top of the S&P 500 are making the majority of the money. We know that even in our wealth gap, the elite are making the majority of the wealth. So I think that it falls right into the same category where grandma and grandpa aren't in as bad of a scenario. They own their home free and clear. They have cash they've saved up, 401ks, retirement accounts that they have. They're getting paid their rewards from working so hard throughout life that now if they wanted to buy, it would be tougher, but they could. They don't have child care costs. They don't have to pay school tax in some states because they're that old. They're not there. They're not where we're at. And to the person that's 45 and under, the life, specifically 35 and under, the lifestyle is so significantly different, so much significantly more expensive. If you were to go buy the 2 used cars you need for both of you to get to your new jobs, that's going to be $500 to pop off the lot. If you want to get childcare costs taken care of so you guys can both work those jobs for your 2 kids, you're not paying another $2,500 a month. On top of that, the rent in your area could be as high as $3,000 at max or minimum $2,000 to live a family. I mean, it's so dramatically different that I think that while the middle class and the young families are feeling the effects of it, investors, boomers, aren't really feeling it nearly as drastically. And if home prices were to start coming down, it's just going to be a discount bin for those that are prepared. No,
I think you're right, dude. And I also wonder your opinion on this too. Of do you even advise somebody who's making 120, has student loans, wants to have children, has all of these bills, has used cars, that, oh, let me put down, even if it's 15K, you get closing costs covered, but then you get this mortgage, then you got pest control, security, maintenance, all this stuff. Like, I'm really on the edge now thinking about it, because if you can rent for $800 or $1,000 cheaper in an area in some places, I wonder if there will be a shift moving away, at least for young people, to buy. But then maybe they'll hop on it even later in life.
Yeah.
Like, these are all different video ideas I have that I haven't flushed out yet. This is why I just want to bounce them off of you. Where
We're bouncing off. This is just a pregame lobby for future content that we're doing right now, dude. The issues are prevalent, and I think we could play this back and forth. I think there is always the benefit of owning a home, because I don't think home prices drop. But your question specifically is the benefit of holding on to that asset worth the monthly debt that comes with it? It's going to be market dependent, because like you said, and we've said in our dark episode that'll never be seen, that it's a slightly different rental market there, where rent is indeed lower than the mortgage cost. Delaware, we're not really seeing that. And a lot of the Northeast is not really seeing that, because frankly, there's way not enough homes, and especially not enough affordable rentals. We're not huge on big luxury apartments. We don't have a lot of big townhome neighborhoods. We don't have a lot of multifamily rental opportunities. So a lot of it's single family, and a lot of it ends up being very similar, if not higher, than current mortgages. So it's kind of a catch-22 if you're in Delaware, And if I were to tell you to go on which side or the other, you got to pay both, own a home, own the asset, be in a position in the future where your equity is going to at least grow and you haven't just thrown it all to a landlord. But there comes the caveat of what if you become house poor? What if you foreclose? What if you got a short sale because it comes through tough? And those are all fantastic things to have a conversation with. I think it's client based. My rule stays structured at you got to make 3 times what your mortgage is going to be. If you want to take on a $2,500 mortgage, I need to make you making $7,500 at least. And if you got 2 kids and your child care,
to do that,
maybe more.
Yeah, I think you're right about the area, because here in Orlando, it's been growing insane. I've never seen something be built up so quick in my life, because I lived in Hollywood for 15 years and no one built anything in Hollywood because there's no space. And then I moved to Florida and it's like a sandbox and they're just building all this shit. But right now, at least in our area, to get a mortgage is going to cost you $3,000 to $4,000 for like the average kind of home. But you can still rent a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,900, but in a nice area, something like that. But the quality of life is different. But there's like that interesting gap. And I think it boils down to us as a generation. Like, it's not even like, oh, it's fun, we're into finances and we want to learn about money. I think it's necessary to learn everything there is about money, because even if you're going to have a mortgage or you're someone watching who has a mortgage, making extra principal payments is such a simple thing to do. That's huge to save you. Could be a year's worth of salary over the course of
and what you owe on that mortgage.
Especially with these high interest rates. We're not
debt consolidation, credit repair, investing advice, how interest works. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that people could look into and learn to at least start the journey of saving and understanding money more, because money sucks right now. Like, money sucks right now. You got to make $56 an hour to begin starting to think about owning a home. That sucks. That's awful. I hate that. But it's one thing to be in the poopy diaper. It's one thing to also try to do something while you're in it. Like, you can't just sit in it. You gotta figure out something. And the something, I think, is finding ways to make more money and save more money. Not getting involved in dumb debt, not having a $1,600 a month DoorDash bill, not putting yourself where subscriptions are railing you. And it could even be to the point where you are having to look at your lifestyle. Maybe you do have to look into renting versus mortgages. Maybe you do have to look into not having the yard for a little bit. Maybe you do have to cut back on how much you're eating out, even though the cost of cooking and eating out, as someone who owns a Blackstone grill trying to save money, geez, I feel like I'm spending the same amount. It's difficult. It's more difficult historically than it has ever been. But I think one thing that you and I both agree on is nothing systemically seems like it's going to change soon. Yeah, or quickly. That's a better word, quickly. So we got to start making shifts now.
And I think it's too is like, pick your sacrifice. I think, again, all the old school stuff that people say, like, you could get to pick your sacrifice and be intentional. If you have to go live with a roommate, don't take the $800 you're saving and spend it on other shit. Put the $800 intentionally on the debt and put a timer on it. That's what my wife and I did. It took us 26 months, maybe 30, to pay off all of our debt, but we were so intentional about every single paycheck of what we were going to do. We were each working a bunch of jobs. I was driving DoorDash for 6 months, and all the money we just kept piling on. And then the real estate commissions really helped, because we were in the 2021, 2022 era, so we did very well. It was kind of sad. We never touched the money. We used a couple thousand every now and then for ourselves, and it just kept going towards our debt, because we got really screwed after COVID, and it was like we were really in bad shape. But we were intentional about the sacrifice. I'm like, let's just rent. We turned our living room into a podcast studio. So my wife and I used to have the show. And so we just kind of lived like that for a minute and just put all the money towards it. But it's like, that's the sacrifice people, I think, have to make is the housing. Because I don't think Netflix and coffee is big enough. It seems like housing or where you live is the sacrifice, but make it temporary. 1 or 2, 3 years.
Well, the avocado toast Starbucks sacrifice has become the calling card of the boomer. Oh, if you stop eating all that Starbucks coffee, you could maybe get yourself... No, we're not even close. If you had 4 cups of coffee every day for the rest of the year, you're not even getting close to a quarter of a down payment on a house. we're not even in the same stratosphere of what's required. We're talking about a world where the median income to get a home has gone from $42,000 to $110,000 plus, seemingly overnight, over a 3.5 year span through supply chain breakdowns, supply breakdowns, and COVID inflation. We have seen a world that has become obnoxiously more expensive. And I agree, the sacrificing is where it begins, but some people feel they're not in a point where they can sacrifice. We're starting to see a world where 1 out of 4 grocery store payments is made on a pay now later service. That's crazy, or a pay later service. That's crazy. We're talking about power bills being put on credits. We're talking about disposable income taking a nosedive. If you look at a Federal Reserve graph from 2021, people don't have savings. So they're putting it on credit, and they're taking what they can now to survive and sacrificing their future. It's only going to get harder to save. It's only going to get harder to put money away. And I remember Kamala Harris, or Kamala, I'm sorry. We're gonna lower grocery prices. We're going to basically fight price gouging. How? How is it going to be done? Trump, how is it going to be done? Because we're looking at a world that is micro greed led. It's not some big switch that you can switch off from the top. We have a bunch of corporations who exist in a country that has capitalism at its heart, that has make the money that you can make when you earn it at its heart, and no form of wealth distribution involved. And to me, and we talked about on our dark episode, which we can go into some of the solutions again, to me, there has to be a little bit of the wealth distribution involved in policy for anything to change. Otherwise, companies are going to continue to buy back their own stocks. Otherwise, private equity are going to keep utilizing leveraged buyout funds to buy up 8 to 12 companies at a time, gut 3 of them to help support the other 8. We're going to keep seeing a world where the stock market is idolized as if it's our economy, while the bond market and the dollar weakens if nothing happens. And yeah, tariffs and the Middle East journey going on right now as we're shooting this. And all of these items are very easy to talk about, headlines. And of course, we got wars and we got funds that are going to some of these wars we have no involvement in, that are all topics worthy of conversation. But frankly, none of them are centering around what does the next 5 years of being a normal, everyday American look like when the American dream is literally being siphoned out from them.
Today's episode is sponsored by NFM Lending. If you are a first-time home buyer, if you are looking to refinance your current mortgage, or you want to buy a second home or investment property, you want to talk to a lender so you can get your financial ducks in a row and get yourself a great deal. I've been working with NFM Lending for nearly 2 years now. They're my go-to lender, and they are because they're so thorough. They educate you through the process, and it's just an absolute wonderful company. They operate in 49 states, so every state except New York. So if you live in any of the other states, you can contact NFM Lending, and they can put a roadmap together and help you get into the home of your dreams, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. My recommendation that I've been doing on TikTok that I share with everybody is if you're looking to buy a home in the next 6 to 12 months, I would recommend talking to them today, this week, this month, so you can put a plan together. You can talk about your debt to income. You can talk about your credit score. You can talk about rate buy downs. You can talk about VA loans. You can talk about conventional loans, but really get the education in a 15 to 30 minute conversation so you can put a roadmap together. So when you're ready to buy that home in 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, you've made the right financial decisions leading up to buying that house. So you can go to nfmlending.com/Freddie Smith. You can fill out the questionnaire. They will get in contact with you and you can put a roadmap together. So again, that's nfmlending.com/Freddie Smith, and they will help you out. Now back to the show. And I think one of the questions that I'm curious with what you said too about the income inequality, where is the money? Like, I understand that the $160 trillion we have as Americans, a lot of it is in the stock market and real estate. Maybe pensions are in that as well. So it's on paper. A lot of it's those unrealized gains. And if we don't look at taxing unrealized gains, which I'm not really a big fan of, I think it'd be complicated and messy, but I still feel there's a huge chunk of money every year that I don't know where it's at. It seems unreasonable that these companies who make $3 billion but say, oh, we're operating on a 1% profit margin, we don't have money. I don't believe you. Like, where's the money going? There's no way. You're lying.
You're lying. Can I give you one stat about that number that popped to my mind when you said that? So in 1981, if you look at our M2 money supply, which a lot of people use as our main barometer for how much money is in our economy, it's savings accounts, money market accounts, cash, checking, 401ks. It does not track stocks, and it does not track certain high yield accounts as well. So we're really not even tracking big money.
So,
here.
so
We're
you're
just
saying
tracking
20
normal
trillion
money.
of M2, just that's being used, not sitting in a company just getting billions of dollars each year. Just
Yeah, to my understanding, it's cash accounts, money markets, savings, 401ks, and just physical
okay.
money in circulation. Again, not ownership of stocks, real estate, things like that. That's considered in wealth. And I think there's another way they try to track it, but it's hard to track. In 1981, that number was $1.6 trillion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. 1.6 trillion. The population at the time for America was 230 million. Okay, so 1.6 trillion, huge number, hard to conceptualize, 230 million. So there were 230 million Americans that were overall splitting $1.6 trillion. Let's fast forward to today. There is now $21.3 trillion in that, which is somewhere between a 12 and 14x rise, 12 and 14 times. The population's gone up 100 million. It's gone from 230 million to 341 million. Many people don't even realize we don't even have a billion people in our economy, in our country. We have 341 million people, just over 50% more, splitting 1,400% more money. So hold on. There's nearly 1,400% more dollars in circulation, only 50% more people splitting it, and everyone feels broker. How? Where's the money? Just to your question, because I have the same feelings. Where are the dollars if we have a substantially higher amount of money? We have a higher amount of credit. We have a higher amount of money. We have more services because we're a service-based country economy to the entire world. Where's the money?
I mean, that's the I don't know. It doesn't make sense because if you, like you said, if you use M2, it takes the argument away of the unrealized, or like, the money that's tied up that isn't being touched. So how is that? So if $21 trillion dollars is kind of moving around through people's hands, but then it goes to the top 10%. It gets put.
And then we're talking about the money that's not even being factored in for with just take stocks. We know that the top 10% owns about 90% of the stock market. So we know that there's a lot of wealth in there. We know that there's a lot of wealth in real estate that is not even being factored in there. Going into those two items, you talk about unrealized gains. I feel a lot of people don't even know what that is. But we have to find some type of way to get into the income structure of, I'll say a simple one that I think maybe would be less messy. Rentals. The income made off rental properties. The income made off the difference between the surplus from an investor's mortgage and the rent that they gain is next to free money as it comes to the IRS, or as is defined by the IRS. And the interest that you pay on your mortgage, you get to, cut that off of your tax. That's a tax break. And if you do certain things, you're able to get other tax breaks. And even if you sell that property and now you have to pay capital gains on it, hold up, wait a minute. No, you don't. 1031 exchange that baby into 7 more. And you can do it all again at scale. Yeah, unrealized gains might be messy, but man, if we don't start finding a way to tax the wealth instead of the work, I mean, and maybe I'm asking for a full-fledged swapping of the system, which maybe is unrealistic, but it just seems like we've built a world where we say, okay, we're going to tax the rich, but then we tax the middle-class items like property and work and payroll instead of the things that wealthy people do, which we're only talking about the need for like a 1% wealth tax to cover the current income tax structure if we tax the multi-billionaires.
Yeah, it would only be like a percent or two to get that. Yeah, and I kind of have, I want to run this idea by you because I know we're going to move into some solutions here. I kind of have a potential solution, and I want you to pick it apart. I want the audience to pick it apart because it almost seems too good to be true. But I was trying to figure out how to fix this wealth inequality thing. What we just talked about still confuses me, and I want to do some more research on that. That is the biggest mystery, how $20 trillion is floating around, and we should all be feeling so much richer and we're not. So that's
Yeah.
a rabbit hole I want to go down of like, where the fuck's that money?
Yeah, there's 6.5 times more
Where
money
is it?
per head in America.
But
Where is it?
if we set that aside for a second, I've looked at all the different tax proposals from unrealized gains to flat taxes, consumption taxes, land taxes. I've gone through it all. And the one thing I don't feel that's talked about enough is gross revenue tax on all businesses, including self-employed, independent contractors. Everybody who is a business owner is taxed 5% gross revenue, but all other taxes disappear. So there's no more corporate tax, capital gains tax, payroll tax. There's no federal income tax. Imagine getting rid of all the taxes, but every company just pays 5% of their gross revenue. This would eliminate 80% of the IRS. There'd be no more write-offs, no more bullshit, no more consulting, none of that. Stay with me, I know. None of that. That would raise about $2.5 trillion a year. And all we have left to do is a flat tax for individuals, 5% for the first 100K, 10% from 100K to 2 mil, and 15% from 2 mil above. Would
So significantly lowering
for
the tax
all working
rate
class.
for
Even the
working
low,
class.
I even looked at, because someone's going to say, well, lower income families, if they're only being taxed, if you make 30K and you're taxed 5%, you're not being taxed your FICA anymore, because that's all included. That's all gone. So you're only paying 5%, not 7.65%. So you're saving some money. Middle class and upper middle class and like the early rich would explode. But the biggest thing that I love about this is that we would actually start rooting for these companies again. We would start spending our tax savings at Walmart, on vacation, starting business. Like, it would go back into the economy, and we would actually root.
Because we know that 5% of every dollar we spend would go
Yes.
back into the country.
But
pretty
we
much.
would root. Like, Walmart did record sales. Great. That means more into the country. And so one of the pushbacks that I saw, because I try to research and debunk myself before I get lit up in the comment section, I go, how can I address all this? Was the grocery stores, for instance, or low margin businesses? They're like, well, some businesses operate on a 2% profit margin.
Yeah, like my brain went to like a restaurant.
But to me, though, I go, that's a 2% profit margin. That's after decisions being made, because you want your margins low, your profit margins low for tax purposes. I would be curious to see what $1 billion, $20 billion, whatever it is that grocery store chains make. You mean to tell me if you make $1 billion, your only tax is the corporation? No bullshit. $1 billion grocery store, $50 million check. You can't run a successful business on $950 million. Like, what it...
Well,
Please
okay,
do.
so I want to play devil's advocate, and also, but first I want to add to your argument. If you're taking away payroll tax, you're significantly altering the bottom line for those big businesses. So you're significantly adding money that could be added into that that profit margin, because payroll tax takes out so much money. Payroll tax kills people.
So you're saying
so if that were gone,
think about the money that would save.
Yeah, if that were gone and I didn't have to pay a payroll tax to my managers and the people running the facility, that's going to lead to a higher profit margin, which leaves room for the gross revenue of 5% to be taken out. I hear you there. My devil's advocate, because I love the idea of us being able to root for big companies. I think getting on the same team again with they're helping build America and we're helping them build America by taking our business there. I think we've lost a lot of that. And I think that would be great to get us back on the same page. My devil's advocate would initially be, yes, the small businesses that are getting hit. Gross revenue's tough. I know when I got started in real estate, I don't know if independent contractors would get factored into this.
No,
or if
independent contractors, self-employed, basically everyone who's not a W-2.
I would just fall into my own
only
income
W-2 is flat tax. If you're anything but a W-2, you're considered the 5% gross revenue person. Because that's my question. When you first started off, however, if you made $300,000, you would owe $15,000. There's no way you paid that little on $300,000, right? You had to have paid more in the current system.
No, I had my best year. I made $416, and I paid $68,000 in taxes.
You paid $68,000.
That was with a lot of write-offs.
So in this scenario, 5% gross would have been what, $20,000? And The
20, yeah,
simplicity.
2022
Imagine you
maybe.
just printed that out, 416,000, sent it to the IRS with a 20K check.
The simplicity, I don't think you'd catch any arguments over that. The simplicity, it has become such an obnoxious tax code. That would probably be the other devil's advocate, is if you'd be taking out an entire niche of careers. Every financial advisor, every tax consultant, every CPA.
Well,
gone.
and you'd have H&R Block, Intuit, TurboTax lobbying the shit out of this,
Yeah.
whoever wanted to bring this up. I also read that
Yeah,
obviously our
yeah.
politicians use tax incentives to have a little control. We want to move more green. We're going to give you tax incentives to buy electric vehicles. So if you got rid of all that shit, but no, you wouldn't, because we would still have the flat tax, the 5, 10, 15%. So you would still have, the government would still have power to kind of move that stuff around. But and it's funny though, the people I feel that would push back is like, well, companies can't do that. It's like, well, middle class people making 48,000 can't live either. If you have a business making 100 million, you figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great perspective there, because you're right. There's so many companies like, oh, we can't pay extra, but we're making record profits, or we just got a humongous bonus for our executive team. That's where the huge disconnect is, because we're not talking about people needing to make another $100,000 a year. We simply need to move our wage marker up with the costs. If you were making on median as an individual $48,000, which was right about the median income of an earner in 2016, you could get a house. I feel if we just moved with the marker of the ability to get into a shelter, a roof. We're not this commoditized investment, get your equity up. I'm literally just talking about shelter. And yes, does that mean that maybe we should start building homes that are only an upgrade or two away from being a cardboard box with windows? Yeah, I think we should. But there's no profit in it for builders. There's no reason for them to. But the income margins required to be able to just get into the American dream, to be able to own a car, to get to and fro work, to be able to work 40 hours, 5 days a week, and maybe have some place to come home to, has become a 6-digit venture. And you're right, there's just many people under the age of 45 that not only aren't there, don't know how they're going to get there. They look at things like, heck, as we're recording this, VO3 from Google just came out 2 days ago and made my gut turn of, like, I watched a news broadcast of something I like looked like a news broadcast, and it wasn't. It was fake.
Today.
It's the AI and automation effects on our job market, I think, are going to be much more drastic than we're willing to talk about right now because of how freaky it is. But
you're right. That is such a great point, man. When I saw that, I was like, this is jumping faster than I could have ever imagined. This is the worst.
And it's only
going
to
to
keep jumping
today,
exponentially faster.
it's already fucking epic.
Oh my God! And when you say it like that, and I've heard debates. I'll listen to a debate. I love a debate, but there's not really a ton to debate on how you regulate this without regulating the very core of our American structure of mega corporate capitalism. We as a country are pushing for bigger and better AI because we want to beat China. We want to beat all these other countries. We want to beat all these other, like, it's not the space race. We're not going to look to explore the moon. It's not that anymore. We're now talking about expediting the technology that is going to lead the working class to 10, 15, and I say this with the most grace because I understand the ramifications of what this would cause to the economy. But we're really talking about 20% plus unemployment rates when it comes down to it in 5, 10 years. A company is indebted to its shareholder. We've known this since the Dodge v. Ford case. We talked about that last time. They are indebted to their shareholder, and if cutting payroll, automating, optimizing, all the fancy words can be caused by cutting payroll and implementing AI, they're going to do it. Like, it's not a debate.
That's never been more clear, because what did they do over the past 40 years? Productivity has gone through the roof and wages haven't. Companies are going to be so productive.
Put that on a shirt.
When AI 10 times. And they're like, no, we'll do some dividend or we'll do an AI UBI kind of thing. I go, I don't believe you, because it's been 50 years you haven't done shit.
Now, say AI UBI does sound like the route. I've heard that debate. UBI, universal basic income, and you could do it through carbon pricing and through taxing the wealth and creating another income stream for the country that
It
could be
has
used
to
for
be done,
UBI.
though.
But again, is
For
it
the
gonna
love
happen?
of God, United States government, you have to do it when this starts. Because as we've just witnessed,
Say it
it
again so my
is,
FBI
you
agent
need
can
to
listen.
do
Go ahead.
this before this starts. Because if you let companies just fire everybody and then you try to go in and infringe on them and say, hey, you have 30 AI robots working here and all these other softwares, we want to tax it now, the companies are going to go, no, no, no. Just like now, we can't pay a wealth tax. We can't do profit sharing. That's not the way things are. We have one shot of the implementation of AI at scale over the next 5 years. Please put the tax on it before it becomes a thing, so it's just, especially if they're going to save the money. If McDonald's doesn't need any workers, then just pay
Yeah.
up
Oh, dude,
pay
I thought about that
20%
so
then.
often. And you're right. We're probably going to react to it too
We
late.
can't though.
And that's, I guess, the scarier part is what would you even do to prove, Fred, if you were in charge to say, hey, we need to get ahead of this? How could you even prove or document AI is being utilized in lieu of a person? I'll give you a perfect example. Fred, for the past 6.5 years, I've been making content, and specifically it's been about Delaware. I'm a Delaware realtor. Over the past 2 years, year and 3/4, I've shifted kind of unintentionally to more of a national voice. One video moved, and I did more research, and another video moved, and here we are. And I'm nobody. I'm a peon. But it's a national voice to whoever's listening. 10 people, 100 people, whoever wants to listen. I'm going to keep yapping. But I've been looking to see how I can bring value and create a revenue stream for myself to support myself so I can keep doing this. How do I bring value to a national audience that actually is meaningful to them? And so we created something called TrueHome. Not a plug, but an example for AI. TrueHome takes a scan of a property that someone uses their own phone with and can measure, monitor, and catalog every nook and cranny of the home. Crack in the drywall, paint isn't up to trends, the kitchen counter spacing is not right, you got clutter. Everything that a realtor would see is in that camera because of AI. And after a full tour, which takes in upwards of 15 minutes of raw video data, takes 48 screenshots, and then runs it against 486 different lines of code, and that's beta. We're probably going to have thousands. That is then fed into an AI to breed a result that is better than a top 1% local real estate professional, costs us $2.18 to run AI through. $2.18. That's nothing at scale. And I'm a dummy who's trying to figure something out with I think it's a cool idea. How many other people are cooking up these AI-infused propositions for our country that are going to yield mega profits for them and a lacking job market for us?
That's a really good point. You're saying, how would you even tell? Because that's a brilliant idea, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, how could you even tell? It's a camera. It's a camera. Like, how are you supposed to, as the IRS, saying you're using X amount of AI? Like, OpenAI is a private company. You don't know how much AI token utilization I'm using. You don't. It would be tough for me to say, okay, we could put this on paper to monitor it unless we actually started it with the companies who were creating it. Because I think the government would have to have some kind of relationship, though, right? With, like, let's say OpenAI or Oracle, who oversees a lot of tech. You'd have to have almost a relationship with them, like an open door relationship, to see who are you allowing to use the AI and for what. And then I'll go a level deeper. Like, one of the parts of the camera system uses an AI, or it's not AI, it's actually augmented reality, AR, it's augmented reality, room plan. You can look, it's free. Apple development, you can use room plan. And it's actually a app to help you design your room. Like, you use it on Amazon. If it says, hey, you want to see what this looks like in here? It shows you right there. We're using that as part of it. That is an AI infused application, but I'm not doing the AI. They're doing the AI. So who do you actually come after?
Dude, yeah, you just made me really rethink that, because in those instances, I don't see where. I guess for me, I was thinking like, oh, you used to have 500,000 employees. Now you have 50,000. So you're saving all this money because of AI. So because
Sure.
of your savings, we want to have a little tax from that.
What if there was some type of requirement of employment based off of revenue? Like based off of however much you made, you have to employ a certain amount. Is that even plausible?
I don't know. I wonder if it's just too early or there's not, I haven't looked at it enough, but but then you've had someone like Elon Musk say that they're eventually going to be like a universal high or high income, because when you have robots and AI doing everything, the cost of goods and services will be next to nothing. And that it'll be easy for people to pay and you can give people money. But again, I don't know. Like I can't take that to the back. We're just kind of along for the ride. But I'm concerned, not concerned in a bad way, but just what the hell is the world going to look like by 2030? It's going to happen fast, because VO3 from Google, I was like, oh shit, we took a huge leap.
Yeah, what's my brain can't comprehend what VO6 is going to be.
It's already great. I mean, because you've seen the photos from AI. Like you would look and see AI stuff and you're like, unless it was a cartoon, you're like, this is clearly fake. I go, I bet you in 2-3 years this is going to be realistic. And then no, yesterday.
I saw a video from AI that was actually making fun of that. It was a comedian. And his joke was, hey, you remember how you could tell because I used to have 7 fingers? Now I'm good. I was like, oh my God, it's making fun of itself.
And it's so accurate. And I think Google, this is just an assumption, because they own YouTube, I wonder if that AI is trained on every single voice, every single YouTube short, and it was able to duplicate it so quickly. Because even girls in the streets, when they're talking about dating, like I've seen clips where they like did AI where it's girls in the street being like, I don't like guys that do the prompt thing and they do all that. But the mannerisms, the way they look, if I was far enough away, I wouldn't be able to tell. If you really look close, you can still see kind of
little things. But gosh, our grandparents are cooked. Cooked. I mean, my grandma has had 8 Facebook accounts hacked. She is cooked. There is no chance. I mean, we're knee deep in the internet, dude. There's people putting in 10 hours of screen time a day, and we're getting to the point where that person can't tell.
And for the first time, I'm actually really feeling empathetic with the older generation, because I'm not going to lie, when I saw how good this was and how I was like, man, this is all becoming a little overwhelming, because I'm seeing videos every day about this new AI app that does this, and this does the voice, and this does this, and now you can do a video, but this does the editing, but then you need to put it through this AI so that it lines up the mouth, and then you have to pay this and do this. And I kept thinking to myself, like, I'd have to put like 30 hours of concentrated work into really learning all the mechanisms. Like, I'm really good on ChatGPT now because I've been using it for 2 years, but these new video things I haven't even fucked with. But it's starting to really, I'm like, are commercials gone? Are brands?
Adobe Premiere, and it's getting into the residential editing platforms too, which makes you think about commercially what's already available. But Adobe now has generative expanding of clips. If I give it a 5-second clip, it can make it 15 seconds based off of what it thinks is going to happen. And that's just what I can do on that computer back there. That's terrifying. That's a lot of power for propaganda. And yeah, I think we could spend a lot of time on that topic. You said you wanted to hit solutions. Yeah. Let's talk about that, because my brain's starting to get filled with AI bush.
Yeah, let's rock out. Let's rock out with some solutions here, so we can leave people on a positive note. So up in the air, 5% gross revenue tax and a flat tax. Let's pin that. That's still my baby for the moment. We'll see.
I like that one, dude. I think a lot of flat ideas just deserve months of conversation and deliberation and debate to get the details out. But I think as a core idea, it's a good one.
I like it. It's on really the board for now. Let's see what else you got that we can put on the board of some ideas.
I'll put up my draft pick nomination. I'll put up mine. So my favorite one, I'll be very honest. I think the first thing that we could have done 20 years ago when Ron Paul suggested it was abolish the Federal Reserve. I think them tampering with our rates and money in, money out, and inventing quantitative easing in 2008 has been a humongous detriment. And I think that conversation could still be had around turning it into an open and honest computer that's monitored by our Treasury Department. Oh, who's going to do the job? The Treasury Department. But that seems kind of like neither here nor there at this point. I do think we should tax the wealth. I do think we could replace the property tax with land tax. We talked about that. So on the government reform side, I think there's two things that have to be done. One, I think we have to start looking at how we get lobbying out. Lobbying is structured bribing, and it allows big companies to pay big money to get their laws passed or the laws that benefit them to pass or not pass. It's just flat, easy to see. It's documented. It's measured. It's not argued. We need to get it out. I think we could grandfather it out by saying, if you pass this, you can take the lobbying money still. You can take your board position when you leave, but the next person who fills your seat can't. I think that would be huge. The second one would just be removing all corporate influence at all from campaigns. There shouldn't be corporate influence, corporate money. It should be publicly funded. And we need to end stock buybacks and board positions for lawmakers post-term indefinitely. If we could create a world where lawmakers actually wanted to get in to serve their country and serve the people and not just be looking at the big bank accounts and the insider trading opportunity and the board position that's going to come for them at the end. I don't like it. On the shelter side, I think it's a lot more complicated. The two that I would say, I got 6 in front of me. Which do I think are the most important? The number one I think is most important is we need to ban institutional investors. I think anybody that owns more than 100 properties has no right to be investing in any more property. I think anybody with under 100, which honestly I think that number should be lowered to a lower maximum, but anyone under 100 we could hit with a fee. But overall, institutional investing has to go away. Atlanta, Las Vegas, Boston, Denver, we're talking 4 to 5% of all properties purchased are purchased by them. We're talking 25% of properties purchased in America that are deemed affordable are being purchased by investors.
And do you feel that when it's the investors though, aren't there enough loopholes by opening up multiple LLCs to try and wouldn't they figure out a way to hide behind all that?
And that's on my journal. We need to look into our corporate structures. This ability to anonymously create an identity to purchase property when you have plans to profit. I think that's whack. I think it's so weird that not only can I do it anonymously, I can go buy a home, and if I get an LLC, if you're unaware listening to this, I can go get an LLC. By the way, if you get your LLC, get it in Delaware. It's one of the best states in the country. And now I can, for $125 within 24 hours, go buy a home, and you have no clue it's me. It is 123 Main Street on a piece of paper, and that is it. You'll never know who bought it. And from there, I don't have to do anything to tell you who bought it. I can then, as you're mentioning, go and buy another property, and I don't even have to use that LLC. I'm not limited. I can have thousands of LLCs, hundreds of thousands of LLCs. As long as I pay my little tax on them, I can keep them and buy completely privately. And I think at least for tax and finance purposes, it should not be confidential. If we want to remain public confidentiality, I can understand that to an extent. But when it comes down to finances, taxes, how much you actually own of a certain given thing, there has to be some actual authority and authenticity or just openness to people that own hundreds of thousands of properties. Because you're right, that would be tough. But what I think would be easier is the last one, a 2% fee on corporate landlord home purchases at closing that's reinvested into a first-time home buyer fund. I called it the investor ladder because I think the more that you own, the more the fee should go up, and this would kind of discourage institutional investors from investing as much while not holding off the mom and pop investor. Also, it would only be done at closing, so it's not affecting cash flow for investors. We need a rental market. We can't not have rentals. So it wouldn't ban rentals, but it would make it more difficult to own many. And the biggest part is anytime one was purchased, we'd be taking a home off the market and making a home available, because we're taking the money that's being put into this investment and we're not taking 2% of it. Just like a VA funding fee you have to pay to use your VA loan, you're taking a certain percentage and you're moving it into a state-run first-time home buyer fund where first-time home buyers now are going to have the opportunity to have some of their closing costs or down payment covered. So you're going to be making an opportunity for first-time buyers simultaneously. And I think that's the kind of symbiotic relationship we can create with capitalism if we actually
And
start
that is one of my favorite ideas, because everything that I hear, I base an idea obviously on, do I believe it would be effective? But my number one, I think even above that, is the efficiency. There's something in my bones. I think as millennials, we are just obsessed with convenience and efficiency. The simplicity of any home you buy after, if it's not your primary home, there's a...
Yeah. The definition I wrote, if you're purchasing the property with plans to
is
profit.
A 2% at closing that goes into a state fund that can help, as long as it's not ripped off, but it's actually used correctly. It's just simple. Do you know the simple implementation of just part of the closing, another 2%, but I'm going to make my money or whatever it is, even if the house had to come down a little in price, I'm sure that would be negotiated. Hey, now that I'm an investor, I got to pay 2% to this fund. So let me just get an 8K discount on the house, and the seller might go, all right, fuck it. But it would be paid, but it's simple.
And that right there too, that's a little bit, but you're absolutely right. That could immediately bring a 2% reduction at maximum to affordable housing that is being purchased by investors, because they are going to be looking at their numbers and they potentially will negotiate harder to get those prices down. And you know as good as I, when a home sells for a lower price in your area, your home is now worth a little bit less.
So it would be paid. I mean, that's the negotiation.
You're right. Us millennials love efficiency. We have to be efficient. What's your morning routine? What do you
Whatever's
like? Everything
quicker.
has
That's
to be
why
efficient.
even with like the gross revenue tax, I just kept thinking of my life being self-employed for my whole entire life, having to deal with S corps and paperwork and write-offs, and you and I get together and go to Longhorn and grab a steak, and I got to keep the receipt and write who the fuck I was with in case I'm ever audited. How about I just print off that I made 100, 200, 300,000 and I write you a 5% check and I'm done with my taxes in 5 minutes? Like, what is all this? Like, that's why I'm always thinking, like, what is the simplest thing? And everything you said, dude, is so right. I think one day in the future, we should get together and try to put a solution-based video together. And I bet you 90% of millennials and Gen Zs are on the same page. They want term limits. They want lobbying out of it. They want corporate to get out of the fucking politics. Super PACs need to go. Stock buybacks. Get out of here.
You said earlier you're empathetic to the boomers. I really am, because when the deeper you look back into economic history, first of all, you realize how young our country is. Very fast. You get to the, okay, why is this that way? Okay, well, that was passed in the 80s. Well, why was that passed? Oh, it's to amend this thing that happened in 58. Oh, why'd that? Oh, well, the crash. And then before you know it, you're World War I, and now you're a generation from Abraham Lincoln. And it's just like, whoa, that was fast. The youth of our country isn't talked about enough. And the fact that boomers did, in fact, live in an age where there weren't phones, cell phones, and there wasn't all this bustling tech. And life for them really has significantly changed. The world is not anywhere close to the same. But the funny thing about it, Fred, is I think most millennials and Gen Zs would sign up for the life they were raised in, would sign up to have that come back. I don't think a lot of people are gripping tight to what's here right now needing to be here. But one thing I will say is one of the biggest pros that has come with it is the unfiltered communication. I'm going to give TikTok the golden badge of honor for that, of the unfiltered communication and education that's been brought at scale to where we know what stock buybacks are. I didn't know what a leveraged buyout was. I didn't know what the carried interest loophole was. I didn't know that the Federal Reserve was even a half private entity until the end of 2022. There's so much information that simply is true and out there, but isn't put on blast by the media, because we know who funds them and we know who politically backs them, and it makes complete sense. And we've put the pieces together now, and it seems like the political people are still playing the game like, oh, we're just not going to yell about it. And we're over here like, fucker, we know about it. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're educated now. Sorry. We know you put a $80,000 price tag on getting educated, but we're able to do it now from YouTube and TikTok Academy. So what's up? And I think you're right. I think a lot of Gen Zs and millennials are on the same page. Let's get passion back in politics and profits out. Let's get people that actually want to make change for their people because it's good for the people and not good for their pockets. We're all on the same page there, and that means getting the old people out, getting people churned out a little bit more term limits, getting lobbying, corporate influence in campaigns. It's all the same, and you're right. We should just put it on.
And we're so close to it, man. Like I agree that it was so nostalgic in the 90s and the early 2000s, and all of these technological advancements and all of this productivity, if they just would have shared even 10 or 15% more of it, we could all just be living the dream. Like it wasn't a lot. You don't need to give us half the wealth. I'm sure if you broke it down, it's a small percentage, and then we could all be enjoying AI, owning a house, having kids, and everything would be the same. Why'd you fuck us 10 years ago?
It's funny. I actually, you say it's probably not a small margin. It's not. I actually did the math. It's called the available wealth ratio, and it's not. It's not a significant amount either. From 1989, the available wealth ratio has gone from 33 to 23. What does that mean? I did the math to show via the M2 money supply how much money's out there, how much is owned by the top 10%. So basically, I could reverse it to know how much was available to the bottom 90. And in 1989, the bottom 90% had access to 33% of the wealth. That was the available wealth ratio. Today, it's 23%. So just like you said, it's not a significant amount, but 10% of the wealth has been sifted out from the bottom 90% over the course of 35 years. And that is one of the biggest differences in then and today is what's actually available. And the reason I made this, I got into a lot of arguments with people around the inflated dollar. What's it worth today versus then? And I understand the math. There's more dollars in circulation, dollars worth less. You have to do that math. But just the fact that we're okay with that having to be what it is nuts. The fact that we're just, oh yeah, it's just worth a lot less. All right, that sucks. And also, I think over time, not just has the dollar weakened, but the amount of dollars available to us has gotten smaller. It's not just about demand, it's also about supply. Go figure. Economics. All these economists yelling about the dollar inflated. Well, let's look at the supply of dollars available to you and I. If we take that into consideration, someone who made 56 grand in 1989 now has to make 288 or 218,000. It's a significant difference. It's a very significant difference. And the purchasing power that someone has to make, let's see, it was $44,000 is 233 grand if you go back all the way to 1985. It's so significant. And if you plug these numbers into like an inflation calculator, they'd say, oh, well, you need to make 156. No, it's dramatically higher. It's actually 233,000 if you factor in what's actually available. And I did catch flack for calling it the available wealth ratio, when technically I'm only counting real dollars in circulation, not wealth. Of course, wealth is extremely hard to track. But the available money ratio speaks for itself. You're right. 5, 10, 15% difference, and it's a whole different world.
Their life doesn't change. You still have 6 yachts, private jets, private schools, private chefs, private trainers. You still have all of that.
Do you focus your, like, when you talk about or think about, I have a mastermind in 15 minutes I'm going to have to get to. I love that we always go over time. No, I love it. I love it. I love it. The wealth being shifted. Do you immediately think of we need to just go right after the ultra elite?
I think number one is that we need to gain trust in our government again, and we need to see transparency of where all the money is, because I also don't want to vote for a 1% wealth tax and they take $400 billion and then send it overseas and Americans don't get it. And now you're fucking these people over, which seems a little un-American to me, even though I think they should pay their fair share. I'm also like, just ripping and taking people's money away. I want to, if they're going to do it, I want there to be data that you can see. We're doing this, we're taking this 300 billion, it's going to go to this cause, so that you can actually track the money so you can see that it's worth it. So first, I think we need to build trust back, get our spending in order, then look at unrealized gains, wealth tax, or if companies would just I don't know, wake up one day and go, you know what would be cool? What if we paid people more? That would be great. This way we don't have to be attacked 24/7 and be taxed. Keep shit the way it is. Just pay more.
Well, I think going back to what you said earlier, I think the stock buybacks are a humongous issue in why they don't do it. Because for big corporations, it is much more tax friendly and revenue friendly for their company to buy back their own stock or utilize it as bonuses for their executive team instead of using the money toward increasing wages.
That's a simple, effective, efficient solution. Because stock buybacks were illegal. And now they're like, no, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Because executives and CEOs get their bonuses and they don't use that money.
Yeah, there were limitations on it. And frankly, a company buying up its own stock just on paper sounds like something that should not be legal. Because you don't have to understand the stock market to understand that if a company whose interest in the stock price going up withholds its own stock from the market to decrease supply to increase its value, and then uses the same stock it buys as payment to its own people at the top. I mean,
and none of it goes to the people who are building the whole business.
Yeah, and it's hardly taxed, and none of it's going to the people who are creating the productivity that make the company great. Yeah, it's nuts. And it goes right back to, again, Dodge versus Ford. Henry Ford wanted to pay his people. Dodge said no, because you're going to take mine. And a judge said right then and there, stockholder first, and we've been running.
And like you said, to wrap it all up, we're not asking for them to split everything equally with all the employees as this big overtaking. Just 10%, 15% more over time would have changed the course of everything. So maybe we'll get to that direction. But yeah, I mean, I know we've been over. Thanks for, I don't want to keep you. I know you got some other stuff coming up, but thanks for popping on to our second ep. But I'd love to have you back on and we can continue some solutions and shoot the shit a little bit more, dude. I always appreciate you. You got great takes, great knowledge on everything. And I really appreciate that.
Likewise, friend. And feedback for anybody in the comments. One, do you hate this camera view switching back and forth? Because I kind of hate it switching back and forth. B, if you're interested and you're in a real estate professional world, I am hosting a mastermind on content that I'm going to be jumping off to. It's free, and I think it's valuable that real estate agents actually understand how to talk to people today when this market stinks. But those are my only plugs. But dude, appreciate you. I've said before, and I'll say it again, this is going to be a top 10 podcast in the finance real estate niche in no time. You have such an incredible way of presenting yourself. You have such fluent knowledge. I appreciate your comments and compliments, because coming from someone like you who is knee deep in this world of understanding the affordability issue is drastic. It's underreported. It's undermarketed. It's not talked about enough. Creating a platform where it can be talked about is one of the first big solutions, just having the conversation. And you're making that happen.
Awesome, brother.
So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you, and let's chat soon.